All right, we'll talk to Susan in Indiana, pronouns she, her. Go ahead, Susan. Let's start with, it says here that you are theistic. Could we nail down, associate, do something with, just let us know what kind of theist you are or what being a theist means to you.
Okay. I am a Bible-believing literalist, and I feel like what God says in His Word is how life on earth should be.
Now, when you say you're a literalist, do you mean that literally?
I mean that, yeah.
Okay.
Like when Jesus says, I am the door, he's literally a physical door.
The dogs are barking.
Yeah,
literally.
You're right. Paul was asking, so if Jesus says he's a door, is he saying he's a literal physical door? Or at that point, can we be introduced to metaphor?
He is saying he is the door to life eternity.
Right. So a physical door to life eternity or a metaphorical door?
I guess that would be metaphorically.
Sure.
Right. And God spreads his wings to bring in the hen. So, there's lots of places in the Bible that seem to be not meant to be taken literally.
And just to further get down where you are with all of this, can I ask you, do you have a suspicion or do you have a number that you believe represents the age of our earth?
6,000 years.
Okay. I am not asking this as a joke, and I'm not asking this in any other reason besides I think I hear something, and I want your honest answer. Are you an atheist pretending to be a young earth creationist, or are you saying you, Suzanne from Indiana, are legitimately a young earth creationist who believes in the literal word of the Bible? And if you are an atheist, and this is a pretend, I would very much appreciate more if you would admit it.
No, I am Suzanne, and yeah.
Okay, then I'm going to take your word for it.
What I wanted to come out. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm a Calvinist also. So I'm wondering, what do you atheists have to say against Calvinism? If God decided you are this or that and that and this, then how are you going to fight against that?
Well, okay, let's start with, you use the phrase, what do atheists? And that's a very specific question, even though it has a broad answer. My argument against Calvinism, from the perspective of simply atheism, is that Calvinism has not demonstrated to me that any God actually exists, that I should believe in any God, and that would just be step one. If you could prove to me a God exists as a Calvinist or anybody else, then would begin the proposition of proving Calvinism. So if we got to that point where if God, you had proven God exists and you had proven the Calvinistic God was the God that did exist, and then you got to, and God says, this in the Bible is what you have to do, then I still have problems from a moral position of, even if you prove this God exists, it doesn't mean I don't think he's a total douchebag. But my specific to your question is, I don't believe your God exists and has told anybody how to live their life. So, Suzanne, would you like to tell me why I should believe a God exists?
I don't understand how, if my God exists and the Bible is true, how are you, as a mere mortal human, going to come against my God? I mean,
well, let's get past the if first.
You to destruction. I'm sorry. What?
You said if my God exists and he is, and his words are true, or however you put it, great. We don't need to go a step further because, yeah, if your God exists, chances are I can't actually beat him up, despite the fact that I love to mention that I can beat up God on my channel all the time.
Right. Nor would I want to.
Yeah, that's true. Right? I'm not a particularly violent. Well, I might be mad at him, but if he existed, let's start with the if. Because if your God doesn't exist, none of this hypothetical matters. Is that true, Suzanne?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why should I believe or even suspect that your God exists? Or why should Paul? He's smarter than I am. And so if you can convince him, I would probably just trust his assessment, which is dangerous and not skeptical at all. Don't do that, people.
I'm sorry. No, okay. Truth be told, I am calling in as a fraud. I'm sorry.
I knew it.
I'm pretending to be my
Suzanne. It's okay. Do you have somebody in your life that you were trying to practice against?
No,
Is that what this was for?
all the people in my life.
Here's what I'm going to suggest,
I'm
Suzanne.
sorry.
Get them to call us. Because while this was fun,
I wish I could.
You don't think they would?
They don't have the nerve.
Well, then what I would definitely recommend is a few resources. The amazing channel of the guy next to me, Paulogia, handles a lot of young Earth creationists and makes short work of them. I definitely suggest street epistemology. There's probably a thing or two on my channel somebody could get something good out of. If not, just the jokes, because I'm funny. And I insist that I am. I know I'm funny because I make myself laugh.
No. Yeah, I get a kick out of you. No problem.
Thank you.
Are you dealing
Suzanne.
with Calvinists in your real life, Suzanne?
Yes, I do.
So the thing about Calvinism is like, if you are an atheist and Calvinism is true, you are off the hook anyway, because God elects people. Like, there's nothing that I can do if I'm elect, I'm in, and if I'm not elect, I'm out. So it really lets an atheist completely off the hook because I'm not elect. So there's nothing I can do. So coming against God it's not even something. It's not even a thing. I'm just predestined before I was born to go to hell. So I should not let it not affect my life at all, right?
Yes, but how do I get my siblings to think that their God is wrong for that whole thing?
How old are your siblings?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you mind if I ask how old your siblings are?
I have 9 siblings. They are between 50 and 35.
Oh, man. 15 and 35 or 50 and 35?
50.
50. So the advice that if you're in a situation like this, the thing is the ones that are younger, you are going to have a harder time with until you notice they're asking the types of questions that make it clear they've been thinking about it. And the good news is with something as fundamental as Calvinism, if you have 9 siblings, I just don't see it as statistically realistic that half of them die as Calvinists. But I could be wrong. Just in the current era, it seems like everybody in these fundamentalist religions hit their 30s, and then there's about a 50-50 chance of them sticking with their religion. That's totally anecdotal based on no actual data, just observation, so don't take those numbers anywhere. The hard part is learning how... Yeah, and the hard part is learning how to ask questions and learning how to satisfy their curiosity as you're trying to get them to think more deeply. And so I would be very much less. So for example, let's say the Calvinist was trying to approach me the way you tried to approach me. My with every caller approach is to start rebutting in the form of questions. So I didn't tell you God doesn't exist, prove it, na. I asked you, why should I believe your God exists? And it's a totally different method. And the fun thing is that you get eventually to a line of questions where they're probably going to bear their testimony at you and you're going to feel like, wow, I got nowhere. And then they're going to think about it for the next 5 years. Not that bad, but the best questions you ask are the ones they take away and they're having trouble sleeping that night because they're pondering on them so much. Paul, what about any other thoughts?
I was going to say, the only other good thing on this issue is there are tons online. If you just want to listen to them in the background, because you don't need to give them your forefront, just watch Christians debate Calvinism versus non-Calvinism. There are so many Christians who are not Calvinists who will bring up every scripture and every point against Calvinism that I don't say you should debate it. But if you kind of want to know in your head what the Christian arguments are for and against that position, that's a good way to get familiar with it, so that you can ask some good questions. Like if you really felt like saying,
right,
what about this verse? What about that verse? So entirely you do it as an internal critique, right? Not an external person, but if you can do this accepting every word of the Bible is true. And most people still aren't Calvinists, right? So
no, I know.
Most Christians aren't. So if you want to know that, I don't.
Calvinism are both.
Right. So you've probably listened to those debates already, but as far as an atheist goes, that's like trying to tell me how tall Aslan is in Narnia. Like, oh, okay, is he 8 feet or 10 feet? I don't care. Whatever. So.
Yeah, and now I will say, just as a last note to this call, because I think we've given you a lot to think about, is I like to think that I don't need people's approval, but I'm very depressed that I'm looking through and nobody is excited that I could tell you weren't for real within like 2 sentences. But it's okay.
I am impressed. I'm like,
thanks.
You sold through me from the get-go. Oh my gosh.
Let's not make it a challenge of whether or not you can convince me you're a real Poe, though. Let's get the real deals in here. But Suzanne, we're gonna let you go. I did enjoy speaking to you. I actually do want to hear an update to your situation and stuff too. So as you have these conversations, if you feel like you have found things that work better with different siblings, my experience with my siblings are. It's a little different too when you're interacting with family versus people outside of your family, because there's already a sort of designated, established level of respect they have for you. And especially when you are the outsider on the religion. Right? And I was the first person out of my religion in my family. And so everybody else got together basically behind my back and agreed, like, so we're all sure Jimmy's full of shit, right? And there was already this established, like, everybody was ready to dismiss. And so it wasn't until people started having questions and wanted to explore concepts and came to me without directly talking about arguing, like they weren't bringing these things in the form of a fight. That was when I started to make actual progress. Is it possible a fight with your sibling is going to result in their atheism eventually and skepticism? It's probably possible. I've just never heard of a story of that working.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel you.
Let's see.
Well, thanks for trying, Suzanne. And I made myself feel good by calling it, so that's all good.
I do have a sister named Suzanne, but that's not me. But okay, bye.
Bye.